Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're joining our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Our guest today is Martinique Mims, an incredible young woman who is here to celebrate her debut picture book, Through the Colors of a Butterfly. Before Martinique joins us, we want to let you know that we have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. It's Little Blue's Runaway Adventures by Dr. Kim Grom, a lovely book about a lovely little bird. Little Blue's Runaway Adventures is a lovely book that kids and grandparents will want to read together again and again. Parents will love reading it too. This delightful story introduces us to Little Blue. We see her fall in love, become a mom, and then go on a crazy fun adventure to be able to spend time with her grandbaby birds. Kids will love the illustrations. This is a perfect book to take a picture walk through before reading the story. Kids will have a lot of fun imagining what the story the pictures are telling. Little Blue's Runaway Adventure celebrates extended family. It also encourages kids to step out of their comfort zones. But most of all, Little Blue's Runaway Adventure is fun. Congratulations to Dr. Kim Grom. Her book, Little Blue's Runaway Adventures, is our brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Joining us right now from the beautiful city of Cleveland, in the state of Ohio. Our guest today, talk about a versatile young person. She is a spoken word artist. She is part of a beautiful program that we're going to talk about called AmeriCorps in City Year. And she's also the author of a beautiful picture book called Through the Colors of a Butterfly. Please welcome to the show, Martinique Mims. Martinique, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited and pumped to be here. This is awesome.
I'm really excited to have you here. Martinique and I were just having a fun conversation. She was really happy and delighted to know that I know about AmeriCorps and City Year, and so why don't we just start there? Give us a nutshell of what this thing called AmeriCorps and City Year is.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much. I actually work as a recruitment manager for an education nonprofit, and that is City Year. And so I sit in the Cleveland site, but we have 29 sites all across the country where young people can do a service year, or what we call a gap year. And that falls under AmeriCorps. And AmeriCorps is a network of local, state, and national service programs that connect 70,000 Americans each year in an intensive service community to meet needs like in education and public safety, health, homeland security. But my organization, City Year, we fall under the education umbrella of AmeriCorps. And the overall goal is to build up youth and their identity and to close the achievement gap in really under-resourced schools across the country. And we are in high pressure to make sure we encourage and uplift our young people with the times that we're living in. And so, it's a great opportunity. I served 2 years. You have the capability of going into schools and what we call a whole school, whole child approach. So helping with academics, helping with social emotional learning, and then also helping with attendance and data tracking. So we're reaching the students not just in the academic field, but outside of all that too.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with City Year. My wife, I've mentioned on the show, has been a teacher for 33 years in the Boston Public Schools. City Year was born in Boston, and her school at the time was one of the first schools that City Year volunteers worked at, and it was really neat. It was this new thing at the time. They were like a small little army that came into the school, and I met my beautiful wife at that school because I was involved in a program a few years before City Year was born, and when we went into into that particular school, it was a school with the highest number of single parent families, the highest number of kids living in homes with substance abuse issues, the highest number of kids with one parent incarcerated. So it was a really, really tough school that was under-resourced. And so when this army of young people came in and began their mornings every morning outside doing calisthenics together, it was very welcome, but also a lot of teachers were scratching their heads saying, "You got to pay me a lot of money to come in here. You guys are doing it for free. What's up with that?"
Yeah, no, it's all about the mission I really stand by, which is like just serving with purpose. And we have a lot of values what we call Ubuntu is one of the values that always stands out to me. And it's my humanity is tied to others. So if I can give something else to someone I might not even know, that can ricochet for myself, but it can ricochet out to the world, something positive. And so that's the idea behind it. AmeriCorps is volunteer, but we do give our AmeriCorps members a stipend. They do receive about $630 biweekly. That's very modest. But again, it's a bigger than themselves type of deal that we're looking for.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I was sharing with Martinique, now I am much older than City Year. I'm much older than many sequoia trees. But
no,
I jump-started my career. I barely had enough money to apply to colleges, never mind go to the prestigious private colleges. So I did the public college route, which was wonderful. And I kind of supplemented my education by volunteering in those same schools in Boston. And I learned more in those schools. And when I came out of college and I was applying, they weren't so much looking at the fact, you only went to a state college. They were looking at the fact that, wow, you have 8 years experience working in inner city schools. Yeah, come on over here. We need you. So, and you're saying that you call this kind of like a gap year.
Yes.
I think I can't tell you how many of my kids' peers, they're going to college and they're investing $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 into college. And I would say to them, "So what are you studying?" "I don't know. I'm going to kind of figure it out." And I'm like, you might want to figure that out before you spend that money. And working and serving others is a great way to kind of find yourself. It's much better than spending money partying on a college campus.
I agree. I tell people when I talk to some of my prospects, I learned so much doing a service year than I did while I was in school, because you get that hands-on experience. You get to, like you said, learn about yourself, your leadership, what you like and what you don't like. And actually, I did City Year after college. I did not know what I wanted to do. I kind of felt depressed because I didn't apply to any jobs. I thought jobs were going to come to me. I graduated in 4 years. I did pretty well. I'm like, where is the money? And it didn't happen like that. And that's when I stumbled on City Year. I actually was working in retail, and this girl came in with a City Year red jacket on. She looked like she had purpose. And so I completely, that night applied and definitely learned a lot about policy and how that all affects the communities that we served. And just because of that 1 year, I was able to go into policy work in Atlanta and work with workforce development down there and learn a little bit about chronic student absenteeism in Atlanta public schools. And I would have never thought about policy if it hadn't been for the City Year experience. So, like you said, you just don't know.
Well, it is true. And I've talked about it here a lot on the college. This kids are, and I don't mean that pejoratively, kids, young men and women in high school, there's so much pressure on them to go into college. They don't have the same kind of pressure to go in with a purpose. It's just, you gotta go to college. Why? 'Cause you gotta go to college. it's a huge investment, and there's not a lot of return on investment unless you get in there. We talk so much about living intentionally, but we don't talk to young people about going to school and investing their time and money intentionally when it comes to college. And I think a City Year is a great way for kids to do that and to really kind of grow up.
For sure. Like I said, I learned so much, and we do a lot of like justice conversations, so you learn a little bit more ins and outs of what's currently happening in your own country. And then also too, like you're saying, you invest so much in going to school, paying all those tons of money. With AmeriCorps, you do get an education award. So once you complete your gap year, 11 months or however long your program is, you could potentially get up to $6,000 that you can use to go towards federal student loans or a part of your tuition. I did 2 years of service with City Year, so I got $12,000 that I am using to pay some of my loans from college. And I'm like, that's so helpful. A lot of people don't know that.
Bam. Man, I wish that was around when I was a kid, because I really could have used that stipend.
Right.
Yeah, but so this is wonderful. And when I was doing that volunteer work, that was really kind of what laid the groundwork that eventually became this podcast, because I was in as a reading tutor. And so I was reading with kids in these schools, and my eyes were really opened up. And the things that I was able to do as a kindergarten kid, first grader, that my kids were able to do when they entered kindergarten, I was working with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders who weren't able to do it. So there is, there's a huge need out there. And you and I have a huge need. We need to start talking about Through the Colors of a Butterfly.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about this book.
Yeah, this is my first children's book. I'm super excited about it. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. This is my first time writing a book and getting into the writing journey, but it has been an amazing thing to be able to process. So my book is about a little girl. Her name is Unique, and she has to confront her fears after her family recently moved to a different side of town. Halfway through the school year, which is like a third grader's nightmare. She's a little girl in 3rd grade. But she also has some physical differences, and that creates some worries for her by stepping into this new school. But she's giving a caterpillar. The teacher gives her a caterpillar to take care of for a few weeks, and this caterpillar turns into a butterfly and takes her through a journey to discover and celebrate her differences and discover how unique she really is. And so the power of imagination and the importance of like self-empowerment and acceptance are celebrated through this book. And really what I learned through this process is the book kind of reflects me, and I didn't think the character was like myself until my coach told me, like, sometimes this could be your own actual life. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it is. So I'm excited for it.
You mentioned talking about imagination and imagining yourself, and that's something that you taught my kids. It's something that I do as a performer before I go out on stage in front of an audience. I always visualize myself going out there and doing my magic or illusions or addressing the kids, and visualize myself being able to do that. Unique in this book had this image. She had these physical differences. And I'm thinking that somebody like that, they spend an awful lot of time imagining how different they are, imagining that people aren't going to accept them.
Yes.
And one of the things that's probably important for all of us to do is to imagine, and instead of focusing and imagining on our differences and how we're going to be rejected, imagine the gifts that we have that we can bring to a new community. Imagine how we are going to be accepted. Imagine how we're going to find friends in those new places.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what my character is going through. She's assuming and making these assumptions that the students at her new school aren't going to like her. And I wanted her to be very diverse. So she's a young person of color, but she also has a disability. She has a prosthetic leg. And so she is very strong. She's done so much at her old school, but all of these things are following her. The leg is not necessarily a big emphasis or a problem, but it's something that is a part of her character. And she's a little worried by that. And so she then sees that this butterfly can transform into something powerful, and she's able to kind of shed that cocoon and step out into her full, like you said, her gifts, and not hiding in the cocoon. So
that's beautiful. I just love that you use the caterpillar and the butterfly. Butterflies are, they're just magical creatures. I was in the rainforest in summer 2019 down in Costa Rica, and we were surrounded by beautiful butterflies. And there's a picture of me. I was wearing it was a rainy season. It was a rainforest, so of course it was raining. But I had a blue kind of those ponchos on, and this beautiful giant blue butterfly landed on my shoulder, and there's a picture of that butterfly, on my shoulder, and they're so fragile, but they're also so big and majestic, and that exactly sounds like unique. Sounds like this character that is beautiful, but fragile, but has so much potential.
Yeah, she is. I love that. That's beautiful what you just shared. I wish. The reason I actually thought about the butterfly too is a few years ago, I just kept seeing like 2 to 3 butterflies every day. And every time I would tell people, like, did you see the butterfly? Like, well, they would never see it. And just something that would wash over me just felt like I needed to share like a story about this butterfly, why this story was created. And I just incorporated this little girl. But I love that she is delicate, but yet she's very strong.
So tell me, what inspired a woman involved with policy, going out there, making a difference in inner city kids' lives, a woman who has been a spoken word artist, and how did this woman decide that she's going to write a picture book?
Yeah. So for the longest time as a young person in high school, I always thought I was going to write programming, so like cartoons for kids or something like that. I truly wanted to stay a kid, even as a teenager. Cartoons like Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, everything. That's what I always watched. But the programming, I started to see it shift, and I was like, is this something that kids should really be watching, or certain things that I saw even as a teenager? And I think I was a little biased, maybe. I don't know. But I always said, I'm going to write cartoons for kids. And as a teenager, I'm just talking out the side of my neck, never thinking I would really do anything. But it wasn't until I saw, after my year of service, actually, an opportunity to do a fellowship with Sesame Street. And I applied for a Sesame Street Writers Fellowship. I didn't get accepted, which is totally okay. But in that application, you have to write a short story or an idea for a program for Sesame Street. And I did that. And I loved my book that I wrote for them. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep going with this. I think I feel a calling to share a children's story. So it started with this one. My passion book is not the one that's coming out. I have something else in mind. I have a few more stories I want to get out, but that kind of ricocheted this piece and pushed me into self-publishing school through Chandler Bolt. They really help you, give you a coach and guide you through how to even get an editor, an illustrator, all that kind of stuff. So
that's really what I want to go back to, this idea that you applied for a fellowship at Sesame Street and you didn't get it. You failed. Oh, my goodness. There's so many parents out there who are bubble wrapping their kids. I don't want my kid to fail. I don't want them to feel disappointment.
Oh, you have to.
You win, and, the chances of you getting a fellowship at Sesame Street, I mean, how many thousands of people were applying for that? There was the odds were stacked against you, but you did it anyways, and you got some great value out of that experience. Yeah. Out of that failure came some really wonderful gifts.
For sure. I'm glad you say that. So I think at the time after I graduated from college, I felt very depressed. You know, I didn't get certain jobs. I didn't apply for a certain job. But seeing that and then seeing again what happened through my fellowship or my AmeriCorps experience, failure is inevitable, right? And if you learn from that, I can pick those gems from whatever that failure was, and I can grow from that. So yeah, I didn't get accepted to the fellowship, but it gave me that idea to write a book, and now here I am talking to you on this podcast about the book. It's out. So
Well, I have to tell you, I auditioned for Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Clown College, and I got far into the process, but ultimately I didn't go to the college. But from that came 30 years of performing as a professional clown and magician. So go for it. If there is something out there, it doesn't matter how little chance you have of making that dream happen. Go for it. Apply for it. And I'm not only talking about parents encouraging their kids to shoot for the moon. I'm talking about you parents out there who've always been dreaming about doing this or that. And, I'm going to retire. I can't do that now. That was for young people. No. Get out there and give it a shot.
It's all about your perspective, and the journey is never ending. You know, like how Michelle Obama says, like, she's always becoming. It doesn't matter what stage you're in. I too, like at 25, I had the quarter life crisis. I was like, I'm a failure. I didn't do anything. And I mean, I was literally in tears constantly. But I think too, your children should have mentors. I had a lot of mentors who guided me at all different ages. And I got to see the perspective. Once you change your mindset and you shift where you're at, you could do so many things. And right now, I feel like even with the pandemic happening, you know, I started the journey of writing the book in February, and then the pandemic happened in March. I could have said, oh, well, no. And a couple of times I was like, you know, is this even worth it? Like, should I do this? Is it right? I don't want to like flaunt around that I'm writing a book. But I look back and I'm like, let me change how I see this. This could be a good thing to create some joy, to create some spirit, you know, and to continue on to see what I'm capable of. And I learned a lot about myself too during this 2020 year. So
yeah, this is wonderful. Hey, you know, I'm going to ask you to share that spoken word piece in just a moment, but this is Black History Month. I'm curious, you grew up with Black History Month. As you look back, who in Black history most inspired you, or who in current history most inspired you?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think. So I don't want to be generic and just say like Michelle Obama, because I already mentioned her, but that really inspired me about the becoming. So when I was feeling down about myself, it doesn't matter your stage or the age that you're in. But let me think. I want to draw up somebody really powerful. You know what? I'm thinking about, I used to be a youth council member in the NAACP. And there, was a president, there who really inspired me. He, too, I guess thinking about age and differences, he told me like, you know, basically that it doesn't matter your age, you can continue to move and change and do a lot of powerful things. And through him, I was able to audition and audition for different contests. One is called ACTSO, which is the Afro-Cultural, Technological, Scientific Olympics of the Mind for young people. It's a national program where young people can compete in like drama and arts and sciences and engineering and all that kind of stuff. And I got to actually compete citywide and nationwide in New York and Kansas City through the opportunity just by discovering him in Cleveland. So, yeah.
So we have to give him a shout out. What was his name? It's Blake. Stanley Miller. Boy, don't you hate that? It's like, I know he was this tall and he used to wear this and his name. I don't know. But we brought it back. We reached deep inside your memory and you brought Stanley Miller, is it?
Stanley Miller,
Stanley
yes.
Miller. So
he was the NAACP president in Cleveland, Ohio for a time. So they have a new president now.
Well, we hope that Stanley Miller realizes how much difference he made in your life and the life of a lot of folks in Cleveland.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really does.
Well, it's time for us to ask you to share that spoken word piece you promised me at the beginning of our conversation here today.
For sure. So, okay. This poem actually I wrote when I probably was like a junior in high school. And speaking of the Act Soul program, this is the poem that actually allowed me to make it to nationals. And it's very quick and short and very simple, but just what you were talking about with Black History Month here, I think it's really important for our young people to recognize and to see themselves. And so the poem that I wrote as a young person was entitled Somebody and Who Are We? Who are we? We are pride and dignity, making great things up that people wouldn't believe. We have great leaders of the past like Booker T, making college more accessible for you and me, and WEB, creating and founding the NAACP. We have Zora Neale Hurston sharpening her oyster knife, and Alice Walker looking back in her past in order for people like us to last. You see young people sitting out there in the world. You can now say, I want to go somewhere, live my dream. In a minute, I'll be up here like Martin Luther King. And even though others may feel it's a lie, just take the time out to make them realize that the pride and dignity that you hold inside is just not some old, bold, flat out lie. That the brothers and sisters of that day paved the way for us today. So I will say, I want, I can, and I will be somebody. And if you say that to yourself every day, you will see what the future holds. Oh, and by the way, who are we? We can be, and we are the definition of somebody.
Awesome. That is beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Wow. That sent chills up my spine. And you wrote that as a high school
I wrote that in high school for the competition.
That's amazing.
With the NAACP.
That's amazing. Well, I know. I've become a fan listening to you. And I know people listening out there are fans now. And they want to know where they can go online to connect more with Martinique Mims, find out more about Through the Colors of a Butterfly, and be able to be the first to learn the new things that are coming from you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Colors of Stories 10. That's The Color of Stories number 10. And then you can check my website. And that's a new journey and process that I've been going through, creating and developing a website. And that's at thecolorofstories.com.
Excellent. Well, we've had a really inspiring time and fun time speaking with my new friend, Martinique Mims, the author of The Colors of a Butterfly. Hey, Martinique, thanks so much for being with us. This was a fun time.
Yeah, I had so much fun, too. Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for every episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We have so many great interviews coming up. Laura Perdue is going to be here talking about her book, The Fort. W.R. McKenzie and Tiffany Caldwell will be here to celebrate the adventures of Forkman. Mifflin Lowe will be here to celebrate the Cuddle Book. This is a big week here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You don't want to miss an episode, so please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Ghana, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Himalaya, Podchaser, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Martinique Mims. Be sure to check out Through the Colors of a Butterfly. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank our wonderful interns this semester, Hannah Pat Oboisky and Alexia Brown. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.